I'm interested in English as a product of globalization, a kind of commodity that affects culture, markets, and education. There are contradictory ideas about this topic, so I'm going to try to give a few different views. I'm going to start with Jay Walker, who is an American entrepreneur and inventor, and he has a very favorable view of global English.
The world has a new mania, a mania for learning English. Listen as Chinese students practice their English by screaming it.
Change my life! I don't want to let my parents down. I don't ever want to let my country down. Most importantly, I don't want to let myself down.
Why English? In a single word, opportunity. Opportunity for a better life, a job, to be able to pay for school or put better food on the table. So is English mania good or bad? Is English a tsunami washing away other languages? Not likely. English is the world's second language. Your native language is your life, but with English you can become part of a wider conversation, a global conversation about global problems, like climate change or poverty or hunger or disease. The world has other universal languages. Mathematics is the language of science. Music is the language of emotions. And now English is becoming the language of problem solving, not because America is pushing it, but because the world is pulling it. So English mania is a turning point. Like the harnessing of electricity in our cities or the fall of the Berlin Wall, English represents hope for a better future. A future where the world has a common language to solve its common problems.
Robert Philipson, a research professor at Copenhagen Business School's Department of English, writes that political, intellectual, and social forces are all driving this global pull for English. The market is further driving and legitimating the export of English to the rest of the world, so English is equated with progress and prosperity. Patricia Ryan, an English teacher from Dubai, offers another perspective of this issue. She says, "We shouldn't insist on English."
We were the first non-Muslims to teach in the state schools there in Kuwait. We were brought to teach English because the government wanted to modernize the country and to empower the citizens through education. And of course the UK benefited from some of that lovely oil wealth. This is the major change that I've seen, how teaching English has morphed from being a mutually beneficial practice to becoming a massive international business that it is today. The best education, according to the latest World University Rankings, is to be found in the universities of the UK and the US. So everybody wants to have an English education, naturally. But if you're not a native speaker, you have to pass a test. Now, can it be right to reject a student on linguistic ability alone? Perhaps you have a computer scientist who's a genius. Would he need the same language as a lawyer, for example? Well, I don't think so. We English teachers reject them all the time. We put a stop sign and we stop them in their tracks. They can't pursue their dream any longer till they get English. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not against teaching English, all you English teachers out there. I love it that we have a global language. We need one today more than ever. But I am against using it as a barrier. Do we really want to end up with 600 languages and the main one being English or Chinese? We need more than that. Where do we draw the line? This system equates intelligence with a knowledge of English, which is quite arbitrary.
Now, I want to go back to the clip that Jay Walker showed. Students chanting, "I don't want to let my parents down. I don't want to let my country down. I don't want to let myself down." Is that actually the students' perspective on this issue? Do they feel a sense of obligation to their country, their parents? Or is it something internal, something that has more to do with culture and identity? I'm going to shift a little to look at a more specific context. South Africa totes its linguistic diversity, but in policy and institutions, the need for English plays out in very complex ways. South Africa's constitution recognizes 11 official languages. Each is given equal status in the constitution. The state may not unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against anyone on one or more grounds, including language. Also, everyone has the right to use their own language and participate in the cultural life of their choice. But what about the actual practices of language use? I'm going to focus now on academic institutions, the university systems. On a basic level, a certain proficiency in English is a requirement for entry into higher education. For example, at Cape Town University, applicants must prove their knowledge of English through their test scores, or for non-nationals, through a variety of tests. Despite claims to demographic change and a shift to include the full diversity of South Africa represented at UCT, weighted towards the disadvantaged communities of the Western Cape, these language policies still seem preventative. And to what end? Is it, as Walker said, that we need this second language to allow more dialogue across cultures? But what is the point of having a shared vehicle for communication if students can't even get into the classroom to participate? Another problem is that once students have gained admission, they are pressured to use English to authorize their intelligence. In Relocating TESOL in an Empire of Age, John Katunich interviewed several students in a South African university. He writes, "Admission at this university requires a demonstrated proficiency in English. English is also established as the language of internal governance and of administration. So essentially, this is an English-only space." The following includes several student perspectives on this matter. One student says, "In my view, if you receive something in your own language, you understand it more. If I don't understand an idea, I translate it to Afrikaans. When I take notes, even though it is in English, I take notes in Afrikaans. According to me, you understand more in your own language." Another student says, "I don't know why I only use English with lecturers. I just want to be formal. I still have that from school." From his research, Katunich asserts that these students often follow peripheral trajectories that position them as non-native speakers and define the university as an English-only space, beyond that which is prescribed by formal policy. Importantly, though, English is seen as a vital tool for transcending persistent racial and ethnic divisions and opening a path for future success. Further, despite being aware of the marginalizing tendency of using this kind of standard English in a post-apartheid space, students are also aware that they have a choice. The issue of English as a global language is a concept that each individual must reflect on for themselves. However, it is clear that, in terms of language, global forces interact with local realities in highly complex and particular ways.